On a rainy Buenos Aires night in 1960, a tall, thin man, shrouded in a trench coat, stepped off the number 203 bus and began to walk the 200 yards to his home. He would never make it. All around him, though he didn't know it, were a hand-picked team of agents who'd been tracking his every move for months, and this was the moment they'd chosen to act. Those events have gone down in history as some of the most daring and audacious in the post-war years. But what really happened? How did events lead to that street corner, and what happened in the days, weeks and months to come? Join us in this video as we explore the capture and trial of Adolf Eichmann. Now, if you haven't already seen it, we suggest you check out our video right here, which covers in detail the hunt for and identification of Adolf Eichmann to understand how we reached this pivotal moment. But for now, let's briefly recap. After 15 years hiding in South America, the architect of the Holocaust had been found. Using a combination of survivor testimony, intelligence work and meticulous surveillance, Israeli Mossad agents had positively identified one Ricardo Clement of 14 Garibaldi Street, San Fernando, Argentina, as none other than SS Obersturmbannführer Adolf Eichmann, the man who had coordinated the deportation of millions to Nazi death camps. Through painstaking photographic analysis and comparing wartime images with surveillance photos taken outside his modest suburban home, Israeli intelligence had confirmed beyond any doubt that one of history's most wanted war criminals was living quietly in Buenos Aires, working at a Mercedes-Benz factory and raising his family under a false identity. But identification was only the beginning. Now Mossad faced an even more daunting challenge: what to do about it? Eichmann was a foreign national living in Argentina, a country known as a haven for Nazi war criminals, one that was seen as more likely to warn him of approaching justice than to extradite him to face trial. That left one option: kidnapping. Issa Harel, Mossad's director in 1960, authorized what would be codenamed Operation Finale. The mission was audacious beyond imagination. Capture one of the world's most wanted war criminals on foreign soil and smuggle him back to Israel for trial. To achieve this, Harel assembled a team of 11 agents, each chosen for specific skills, including Rafi Eitan, the field commander with extensive experience in complex operations, and Peter Malkin, a surveillance specialist skilled in close-quarters capture techniques and the man whose job was to apprehend Eichmann. Their cover was ingenious. Argentina was celebrating its 150th anniversary of independence in May 1960, and Israel had sent an official delegation including El Al airline staff to participate in the festivities. The Mossad operatives would pose as part of this delegation, giving them a legitimate reason to be in Argentina and access to diplomatic flights out of the country. Eichmann himself was a man of habit. The team knew that he left for work at the Mercedes-Benz plant at the same time every morning and came back at the same time every evening. Kidnapping at the plant was out of the question. There'd be too many witnesses. Kidnapping him in the mornings on the way to work was out of the question. The agents were likely to be seen. That left the evenings when Eichmann returned from work. The timing, though, was crucial. They would only have a narrow window to capture him, confirm his identity, and extract him before anyone even noticed he was missing. To understand the capture, though, we need to examine the geography of Eichmann's world in detail. Locations that can still be traced to this day. San Fernando is located about 20 kilometers northwest of downtown Buenos Aires, accessible by bus from the city centre. In 1960, it was a quiet, almost agricultural area with only a few scattered homes that, as we see, is today heavily urbanised. Garibaldi Street, where Eichmann lived, runs east-west through this residential neighbourhood. At number 14, his small, isolated, single-storey house sat alone down an unmade street. But where exactly? Despite the massive changes between 1960 and now, we can still identify it. The key is through this Mossad surveillance image, taken from a raised embankment. In front of that is a small river with a road bridge to the left and a road running into the distance, off which can be seen Garibaldi Street, with Eichmann's isolated home just here. Positioning ourselves over the same approximate area on the modern satellite image, we find an embankment, actually a rail line, a river to its front, although covered over, in part today, a footbridge, the road running into the distance, and then Garibaldi Street just here. Today, there's basically nothing left to show from the area in 1960, but by triangulating known points and consulting historical records, we can identify this precise spot as one where Eichmann's house once stood. The modern street view shows us a fairly unremarkable and run-down suburb in modern Buenos Aires. Turning back to the aerial view and looking just a few hundred yards northwest, we can identify the location of the Route 203 bus stop at the intersection of Hipólito Yrigoyen and Avenue Avellaneda, the spot where Eichmann would arrive each night before making the 5-minute walk to his home. Mossad had identified several key factors that made this location ideal for their operation. The street lighting was minimal, providing cover for their activities while still allowing enough visibility to confirm their target. Traffic was light in the evenings, reducing the number of potential witnesses. The neighbourhood was quiet and agricultural, meaning unusual activity was less likely to be reported immediately. Additionally, Eichmann didn't have any immediate neighbours that could potentially observe the capture. Finally, multiple escape routes were available, including back streets that led to major roads heading toward Buenos Aires. It was agreed that this would be the capture location. On the evening of the 11th of May 1960, the Mossad team took their positions around Garibaldi Street with military precision. Each operative had spent weeks rehearsing the operation, timing every movement down to the second. At 7:15 p.m, 2 agents positioned themselves in a black Buick parked here at the intersection of Garibaldi and Avenue Hipólito. This would be the capture vehicle, powerful enough to speed away quickly, but common enough to not attract attention. A second car, serving as a backup and surveillance, was parked a block away on this bridge, offering a clear view of the operational zone. It would prevent any others from driving up to the kidnapping point and would also provide the capture team with overwatch. Additional agents positioned themselves on foot throughout the area. Here's Peter Malkin, one of the Mossad operatives who took part. The team arrived in San Fernando a little past 7:15. Swinging onto Garibaldi Street, we eased to a stop 20 yards before the house. The street was deserted. There was still no rain, but the wind had picked up, and every minute or two there was a flash of lightning. The lightning was worrisome. In my dark clothes, only partially obscured by bushes and trees, I might be visible from the house. I walked back 40 paces, measuring the distance to the spot where I intended to meet him. Then I waited. 10 minutes went by, 15, 20. I wandered back to the car. "It's getting late, what do we do?" I asked. "Maybe we missed him," it was Hans's answer. "Maybe he came earlier." I shook my head. "No, he's not there yet. You can tell from the light in the house." "We stay," decided Usi. "I don't want to have to do this again. Give him 15 more minutes." In truth, there was real concern at that moment. Eichmann, for the past few months, had been like clockwork, arriving home at the same precise time each night, walking the same route and always alone. For whatever reason, this night, he was running late. This meant that half a dozen men, who were not normally in a sparsely populated area, had to loiter around for even longer, with each minute increasing the risk of detection. Here's Malkin again. For the time being, I stayed by the car. If someone came by, I would pretend to be helping out with the engine. Just then, off to the left, heading north on 202 from Buenos Aires, at once familiar and startling, the 203 bus came into view. Literally at that instant, a young man turned up on Garibaldi Street on a bicycle, his overcoat whipping behind him like a cape. Spotting us, he yelled a friendly something in Spanish and started pedaling our way. "Leave us the hell alone," the words rang out within. "Get away, you goddamn good Samaritan." Smiling at his approach, Maya simply shook his head and slammed down the hood, giving it an affectionate pat for good measure. Waving, the guy passed by and continued around the corner. Instantly, Maya reopened the hood. The bus was at the stop now. I froze, watching the wind in my face. When it pulled away, there, framed in a silhouette by the oncoming headlights, stood Eichmann. Beside him was a stocky woman. For several agonizing seconds, as they crossed the highway, it appeared they were together, but on the other side, she veered off to the left and he went to the right. As he turned onto Garibaldi, I began my leisurely stroll toward him. There was still no rain, but the lightning was flashing, the thunder boomed. It was Judgment Day. We were 15 yards apart. I could hear his footfalls, regular as ticks on a clock. Would he pause at the sight of the car? No. He didn't even hesitate. 25 feet between us. 15. Un momento, senor. The simple sentence I had been practicing for weeks. He stopped. Behind thick black-rimmed glasses, his eyes met mine. He took a step backward. I leapt at him, grabbing for his right hand. We fell hard to the ground and tumbled into the shallow ditch alongside the walkway. I was on my back with a couple of inches of mud, holding him with all my strength, one hand around his throat, the other restraining his right hand. He was making gurgling noises. As I struggled to my feet, hoisting him with me, I eased the pressure on his throat. Suddenly, shockingly, he let out a piercing scream. It was the primal cry of a cornered animal. Tightening my grip, I abruptly cut it off. Momentarily shaken, I quickly recovered. "It will do you no good, you bastard," I told myself as I dragged him towards the car. "This is the end for you." Suddenly, Meyer appeared. He lifted the prisoner's feet and I kept hold of his shoulders and head. We were at the car. The back door swung open and we stuffed him inside. As the car pulled away from Garibaldi Street at high speed, the remaining agents melted away into the neighbourhood, following predetermined escape routes, and by 8:10 p.m, less than 5 minutes after the bus had arrived, Adolf Eichmann had vanished from the streets of San Fernando. With their target in their hands, the Israeli agents headed to a safe house Mossad had rented weeks earlier. They needed confirmation that this man was indeed Adolf Eichmann. Malkin recalled the following. Trailed by Hans, Usi and I, led Eichmann to his room. Shutting the door behind us, we studied the prisoner for the first time. He stood in the centre of the room, still in his overcoat, his eyes obscured by the goggles. He was utterly rigid, except for his hands, which kept opening and closing spasmodically. The man was terrified. Months before, Fritz Bauer had forwarded to Tel Aviv a list of Eichmann's identifying characteristics obtained from the SS files. Hans, whose primary responsibility as interrogator was to make a positive identification, knew it by heart. A scar of 3 centimetres beneath the left brow, 2 gold bridges in upper jaw, a scar of 1 centimetre on left 10th rib, tattoo under left armpit listing blood type, height 5'8.5" to 5'10", weight 154 pounds in 1934, circumference of head 22 inches, hair dark blonde, eyes blue-grey, shape of head elongated and narrow, shoe size 8.5, SS numbers 45326 and 63752, Nazi Party membership number 889895. At Hans's direction, we lay him down on the bed, still fully clothed. "Was ist dein Name?" demanded Hans sharply, like a master addressing a disobedient dog. "Ich bin Ricardo Clement," came the trembling reply. His voice was very weak and raspy. "Was ist dein Name?" "Ich bin Ricardo Clement." 4 times the question was asked and the answer repeated. "Take off his coat and shirt," snapped Hans in English, finally, with sharp contempt. To a man in the prisoner's position, the tone must have been extraordinarily menacing, indeed harrowingly familiar. As we pulled the prisoner to his feet, it suddenly struck me. He's not wearing his glasses. My God, what's happened to his glasses? I didn't say a word. What was I going to do? Tell Hans I'd lost them? We removed the coat, his jacket, white shirt, tie and shoes. He stood before us in trousers and socks, his hands still working. At Hans's direction, I lifted his left arm. Where the tattoo with his blood type should have been was a small scar. Something had been removed. The scar on the chest was just where it should have been. Silently, we began to take his measurements. His height, the circumference of his head, his shoe size. All 3 of us buzzed around him with measuring tapes, like so many tailors fitting a gentleman for a fine suit. Everything matched perfectly, except the dental information. The man before us wore dentures. "Was ist dein Name?" demanded Hans again. "Otto Henninger," he now said. It was the one he had used all those years before as a forest ranger. We looked at each other. It meant nothing to us. "Your SS number," spoke up Hans sharply, "was 45526. There was a pause. "No," he corrected. 45326. "Good. Now, was ist dein Name?" "Ich bin Adolf Eichmann." The words sent a shiver through the room. After 15 years of hunting, they had him. With Eichmann's identity confirmed, the team faced their next challenge, getting him out of Argentina without triggering an international incident. The extraction plan was as audacious as the capture itself. Israel's official delegation to Argentina's independence celebration included an Al aircraft that would return to Israel after the festivities ended. This plane would carry Eichmann out of the country, but only if they could get him aboard without detection. Over the next 8 days, as Argentina continued its independence celebrations, the Mossad team prepared for extraction. This period was perhaps the most dangerous of the entire operation. They were holding one of the world's most wanted war criminals in a suburban safe house while maintaining their cover as Israeli diplomats. Thanks to Mossad's archives, we can see exactly how the extraction team managed to slip their captive past Argentina's airport security. Eichmann had to be transformed into someone who could pass casual inspection at the airport. The team obtained an El Al uniform in his size and altered Eichmann's appearance as much as possible. His hair was styled differently, he was given eye covers for an eye injury, and his posture was changed through coaching and the effects of mild sedation. Most importantly, he was rehearsed on his new identity. If questioned at the airport, the drugged Eichmann was to respond minimally and appear further disorientated from illness and medication. Meanwhile, other team members maintained surveillance around the safe house and monitored Argentine media for reports of Eichmann's disappearance. Remarkably, there seemed to be no significant search for the missing Ricardo Clement. His family had reported him missing to local police, but there was no indication that suspected kidnapping or connected his disappearance to his wartime identity. On the 20th of May 1960, the Israeli delegation prepared to depart from Ministro Pistarini International Airport, now known as Ezeiza International Airport, located about 35 kilometers southwest of Buenos Aires. The distance from the safe house to Ezeiza Airport, approximately 35 kilometers, represents the final leg of Eichmann's journey on South American soil. The Mossad team faced a crucial challenge, getting Eichmann through Argentine immigration and customs without detection. Their cover story that he was an ill crew member being evacuated for medical treatment would only work if Argentine officials didn't look too closely and Eichmann didn't speak up. The extraction team arrived at the airport in the early afternoon, several hours before the scheduled departure. Eichmann was dressed in El Al uniform and heavily sedated, conscious enough to walk with assistance but disorientated enough to explain his lack of responsiveness. 2 agents posed as concerned colleagues helping their ill crew member. They carried medical documentation suggesting he had suffered a minor accident and needed to return to Israel for treatment. The crucial moment came at the immigration checkpoint. Argentine officials examined the group's diplomatic passports and crew documents. The sedated Eichmann mumbled responses when directly addressed, supported by his colleagues who explained his condition. The immigration officer stamped their documents without extended questioning. Their medical cover story had worked. At 8:30 p.m. on May 20th, 1960, the El Al aircraft carrying Adolf Eichmann lifted off from Buenos Aires and headed northeast towards Israel. Only when the plane reached international airspace did the Mossad team finally allow themselves to believe the operation had succeeded. After 15 years of hiding, Adolf Eichmann was finally about to face justice. The El Al flight carrying Eichmann descended through the sky towards Ben Gurion Airport in Lod, its landing lights cutting through the darkness over the Israeli countryside. Upon his arrival, he was presented with his arrest warrant and formally booked into jail. He had his fingerprints taken, took a physical exam, and his personal effects confiscated. Note his personal effects include a Mercedes-Benz identification book used to clock in and out of work. Within hours of touchdown, on the 23rd of May 1960, Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion made an announcement that electrified the world. Adolf Eichmann, who was responsible together with Nazi leaders for what they called the final solution of the Jewish problem, that is, the extermination of 6 million European Jews, has been found by Israeli security services. On the morning of April 11th, 1961, at precisely 9 a.m., Adolf Eichmann was led into the dock at Beit Ham, the People's House, a modest cultural centre at 15 Bezalel Street in Jerusalem, that had been hastily transformed into the world's most watched courtroom. Eichmann sat behind specially constructed bulletproof glass, designed after Israeli intelligence warned of political assassination attempts from both Nazi sympathisers and Holocaust survivors seeking personal revenge. The transparent booth became an iconic image, broadcast live via satellite to television audiences across Europe and North America, making this the first internationally televised war crimes trial in history. Throughout the trial, Eichmann took detailed notes which have been preserved and can be seen today. For months, survivors took the witness stand. They spoke of the train platforms at Auschwitz-Birkenau in occupied Poland, where Eichmann's meticulous scheduling had delivered over 1 million Jews to their deaths. And they reference the nondescript office building in Kurfürstenstrasse 116 in Berlin, where the unremarkable bureaucrat had administered genocide with the same precision others might use to organise a postal system. On the 14th of August 1961, Judge Benjamin Halevi rose from the raised bench at Beit Ham and read the words the world had been waiting to hear. Guilty on all 15 counts of crimes against humanity, war crimes and crimes against the Jewish people. In the bulletproof booth, Adolf Eichmann showed no emotion. After his conviction, Eichmann was transferred to a place that would become his final address, Cell 18 in the maximum security wing of Ramla prison, located on Hasharon Street in the town of Ramla, just 15 kilometers southeast of Tel Aviv. The stark concrete room, barely large enough for a bed and desk, became the place where the man who had orchestrated the murder of millions would spend his final months writing memoirs that continued to proclaim his innocence. The final decision rested with Israel's leadership. On the 29th of May 1962, President Yitzhak Ben-Zvi sat in his office, reviewing Eichmann's final plea for clemency. After consultation with Prime Minister Ben-Gurion, the decision was reached. The death sentence would stand. At 11:53 p.m. on the 31st of May 1962, in a specially constructed execution chamber within the walls of Ramla prison, Adolf Eichmann became the only person ever executed by the State of Israel. His final words, "Long live Germany, long live Argentina, long live Austria. These are the three countries which I have been most connected to and which I will not forget. I greet my wife, my family and my friends. I am ready. We'll meet again soon, and so is the fate of all men. I die believing in God." Hours after the execution, an Israeli naval vessel slipped quietly out of Ashdod port, 25 miles south of Tel Aviv, carrying Eichmann's cremated remains towards the Mediterranean horizon. Under cover of darkness, the ship crossed into international waters beyond the 12-mile limit, where the ashes of the man who had helped orchestrate the Holocaust were scattered into the sea, ensuring that no grave could ever become a pilgrimage site for those who might wish to honour his memory. Adolf Eichmann spent 15 years believing he had successfully disappeared into suburban anonymity. He was wrong. In the end, the bureaucrat who had organised genocide with such methodical precision was himself captured through equally methodical planning and execution. The hunter had become the hunted, and the reckoning had finally come. Thanks for watching. If you found this exploration of Operation Finale compelling, please like and subscribe for more deep dives into pivotal moments that shaped our modern world. That's all this time. We'll see you again soon.